Gentlemen, great to see you. Dr. Thayer and Mr. Atkinson, I don't hold a lot of hope for Congress to do sweeping things in this arena for a lot of different reasons. Unfortunately, I think it's going to take unilateral action, which then Congress can follow by any president from any party. And let's start with the fact that I think, and if you'll confirm this, that many Americans in investment are funding our own demise through investments in China, and China operates under a different set of rules in our financial markets than our own United States companies do. Can you confirm that assertion, number one, and number two, what would be the answer that an administration could take unilaterally while Congress continues to ponder the implications?
Congressman Perry, thank you for the question. Sir, it is correct. That is the case. And the solution to that would be to demand and require transparency from Chinese entities operating within the United States. They should play, U.S. firms and Chinese firms should play by the same rules.
Is there any, go ahead, Mr. Atkinson.
Well, Congressman, I agree with you that ultimately, and this is going to have to come from an administration because there's just so much complexity. But, for example, we could delist Chinese firms from our equity markets because of lack of transparency. I believe the SEC has the ability to do that now, and they've chosen not to.
So they have the unilateral ability, but choose not to. And just out of curiosity, other than what I describe as the founders described as the avarice of man, right? Greed. What other reason would they have to not do that to protect America? Why wouldn't they just demand that a foreign entity be operating under the same rules as our own entities, especially a foreign entity that is described as their enemy?
I don't think you can underestimate inertia in the federal bureaucracy. It's just because they've been doing it that way, and it's very, very hard to change that attitude and that mindset, which is really ultimately what presidential leadership is about.
Is this are these the actions of the Secretary of the SEC or the Treasury, guided by the direction of the President? Is that simply how difficult it is, or is it something much more complicated that requires papers and boards and meetings, or can this be done essentially with the stroke of a pen?
There's a lot of things that could be done by the stroke of a pen, or just basically the presidential bully pulpit.
Dr. Thayer? As
Chairman Comer recognized, it's an aspect of recognizing the nature of the threat, of the immediacy of the threat. And essentially, this is thinking of the Ancien regime. This is old thinking. They're thinking that the People's Republic of China is going to be a responsible stakeholder, as it was once observed. They simply don't recognize the nature of the CCP threat.
I just got to say, Dr. Thayer, if you're working at the SEC or the Treasury or the administration and have that mindset, I think it's long past time that you go find a job in the private sector. That having been said, Ambassador, what has frustrated me among a million other things in this topic is the World Trade Organization and that China continues to operate as a developing nation, right? How can we, and again, while Congress ponders the implications and does nothing, how can an administration unilaterally take action to right this thing and treat China and have the rest of the world treat China for what it actually is?
Well, I'm not a trade policy expert, but I would just begin taking steps to see how you could de-risk or decouple them from the WTO. Not uncomplicated, but I think that conversation has to happen. Again, our footing is not commensurate with the threat. I think we need to be nimble and aggressively work with our Five Eyes partners and others with more oars in the water and have them paddling much faster than they are now.
So, I mean, I think what I just heard you say is, look, we got to at least start by having a view towards doing that and then laying out the steps. But I gather from that comment that step or those steps haven't even occurred at this point.
Widely controversial.
Why would it be widely controversial? Who considers China a developing nation like they're you know, like they're still farming with oxen out in the rice paddies or something like that, and they all eat like, you know, 4 ounces of rice and drink a cup of water a day for sustenance. Is that what people believe, literally?
I think there's a lot of people making a lot of money. I think it's driven by Wall Street, and I think it's also driven by consumer appetites as well. So I think we've settled into this kind of a chadia or sloth period for a number of years, and one of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle raised it. And but it needs to be engaged accordingly and not have this China blindness that Admiral Studeman, the great Admiral Studeman, referred to in a speech last year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.